Now let's turn to our first interview of the day. In studio, we have Laura Catherine Carruthers-Green, member of the Des Moines chapter of the Dorothea Project. Laura, thank you for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
It is wonderful to have you with us on the Feast of St. Oscar Romero, which is important to some of the things that the Dorothea Project is doing. So first of all, let's define what is the Dorothea Project, and then we'll get to why today's feast is especially relevant.
The Dorothea Project is a national grassroots movement of Catholic women who feel called to live our faith out loud. And our mission is to educate on Catholic social teaching so our communities are empowered to speak truth and act in defense of vulnerable people wherever we see human rights and human dignity being violated. The name the Dorothea Project comes from two of our three patrons, which is Servant of God Dorothy Day, most famously known for co-founding the Catholic Worker Movement. Servant of God Sister Thea Bowman, known for speaking up for racial justice during her time. And then the third patron is the Sorrowful Heart of Mary.
Absolutely wonderful. Now, how long have you been a part of the project, and how long has it been here in Des Moines?
I've been a part of the Dorothea Project since last fall in terms of getting involved in their monthly chapter meetings for the national organization. They have monthly Zoom calls. They have a big social media presence on Instagram and a great website with a lot of wonderful resources related to our Catholic faith and Catholic social teaching. I heard the call from one of their national chapter meetings earlier this year, looking for people to start local chapters where they live to get together with like-minded women. And I thought that would be something that I would like to do here in Des Moines. And so I held our first Dorothea Project chapter meeting for Des Moines back in February and was really pleased to be joined by 7 other women. And we are the ones that are starting the Des Moines chapter. So it's a relatively new presence here in Des Moines, but we're hoping through the Lord that we will continue to grow.
Wonderful. Do you have a date pinned down for the next meeting?
Yes. Our next meeting is going to be Saturday, April 4th. It's going to be at 10 o'clock, and it's held at St. Catherine of Siena Catholic Student Center and Church in Des Moines.
Wonderful.
And all are welcome.
Awesome. Well, so today, of course, St. Oscar Romero's feast. And very relevant saint for our time. Also, I see on your website that particularly for today, the national organization has pinpointed today for some action as well. So, speak more to that if you don't mind.
So the Dorothea Project nationally decided that St. Oscar Romero was a saint that they wanted to highlight because, as you mentioned, he really is a saint for our time right now, where we're at in the world and particularly in our country. As instances of violence continue to increase around our world, and we see instances where people's God-given human dignity is being violated and abused and ignored. We're reminded of St. Oscar Romero's example during his time in El Salvador when he also saw instances of violence and death and abuses against people for many reasons. And he used his platform, which, as you mentioned earlier, was his radio broadcasts, to speak truth to power and to remind people that they're all children of God. We all have dignity given to us by God, and we're called to treat each other with that on all sides of a political spectrum, all sides of an ideological spectrum. And so the Dorothea Project wanted to highlight how St. Oscar Romero used his voice to speak up, to speak truth, and to defend human dignity. And so today, women who are a part of the Dorothea Project are using our platforms, such as Iowa Catholic Radio, using social media. That's kind of our main platform of today, like Archbishop Romero used the radio during his time, just to speak up and share about our faith and how our faith and our following of Jesus in the Gospels spurs us toward greater compassion, greater mercy, greater love, and greater justice for those in our world.
So, one of the interesting things with St. Oscar Romero as well is I remember before I became Catholic that Romero there's a movie about him that relatively well known at the time. And I think that St. Romero is ebbing and flowing. He seems to be one of those saints that every so often people start seeing more of a role for him. You hear more about him. But I will say that even in the popular conscience, there was a time where that movie made people relatively well aware of him. And so maybe today is a good day to, go find a DVD player if you still have one, or see if it's on a streaming service. I can't say.
I can. It's actually on the free streaming service Tubi. Tubi.
Oh, it's on Tubi. There you go.
Yes, I just watched it with my students at Dowling Catholic, actually, a couple weeks ago when we learned about Archbishop Romero's legacy. I'm a Spanish teacher at Dowling Catholic, so especially relevant, Archbishop Romero, not only for my passion for Catholic social teaching, but for my interest in the Spanish-speaking world.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, there you go. So, go to Tubi, and today is a good day of any to find out about Romero, a movie that even among movies that are biopics, said to be pretty straightforwardly good representation of his life. I think they said they kind of smashed some of the events together to make it quicker movie form, but otherwise a very good representative movie.
Yes, it is. And I would say they used a lot of the lines from Archbishop Romero's homilies within the movie. So the words that you hear speaking, Raul Julia speaking as Romero, are indeed Romero's words, which continue to echo in our public conscious even today, if you would watch it.
Absolutely. So wonderful. Free if you have, and I think Tubi's free as well. So hopefully people get a chance to look at that. So when it comes to, social justice, education, obviously near and dear to my heart, Bud and I have The Uncommon Good, where we've been trying to do this as well for many years. On one hand, it seems like people have a relative understanding that the church has things called social teaching, but then it can get very difficult, it seems to me, precisely because people are worried about talking about politics in the church. They're worried about being too divisive. But Catholic social teaching as a foundation, as I always tell people, should be something prior to any political commitment and be the sort of language that we use to begin to, as you say, speak up and talk about the issues that need to be spoken of. Is that something that you've ran into, not only maybe with the Dorothea Project, but even just in your interest in this topic, that because American propensity for politics to capture all discussions, it's hard to get to the heart of Catholic social teaching?
Yes, I have found that to be true. And I unfortunately see that division in our country and sometimes even within our church. And I think something we have to come back to as Catholics and as people of faith and of goodwill is that Catholic social teaching comes from the Gospels, and it comes from Scripture, and it comes from our tradition, from papal encyclicals, from popes many centuries back, and it is embedded within our tradition. It is embedded within our faith, and so we're all called to discern how we live that out in our lives, and people certainly have different themes of the 7 Catholic social teachings that they are drawn to more than others, and that's a great start. And I think one of the missions of the Dorothea Project is really relevant to that question, is that one of the main missions is to bring Catholic social education to parishes and to communities, because it sometimes remains both hidden within our tradition for many Catholics, and it also sometimes remains intentionally on the side because people are afraid and unsure how to approach it. And so one of the missions of the Dorothea Project nationally and locally is to figure out how can we help people understand Catholic social teaching, where they're at in their faith, and then all move forward together for the common good and for our brothers and sisters who need us to speak up for them. And we do so out of love, out of charity, out of justice, and out of mercy.
Well, I also think it's very fitting that on today that we're hearing about it, on St. Oscar Romero's feast, about the role women particularly worried about social justice and coming together in order to advocate, pray, and speak up on behalf of the Church's tradition. In San Salvador, in the Civil War, I mean, a lot of aspects within the Central and South American troubles and difficulties of the 70s and 80s. It was particularly women who were targeted, women who were kidnapped and then never found. And St. Romero himself noticed this and was willing to point this out. In fact, that's part of maybe what got him into trouble to begin with that led to his death. So do you think that that's one of the timely aspects of the Dorothea Project, is to say women's role, the feminine genius of the Church, as John Paul II says, of being involved in precisely these questions, the questions that St. Oscar Romero was willing to ask in his life, as dangerous as they were to ask?
Yes, I think, and that's why the Dorothea Project, I think, has gained so much traction among women right now, is because we do feel this sense of wanting to move further in our faith, inspired by not only men like St. Oscar Romero, but like I mentioned earlier, Sister Thea Bowman and Dorothy Day, many women throughout our own country, in our faith and our world's history, who have continued to move out of faith in justice and in charity. I'm thinking of women religious back in the beginning of hospitals and Catholic education in our country, and then adding in the Catholic worker movement. Women have always been there, just like women were always there in Jesus's time. Mary Magdalene being at the tomb, and our mother being at the cross. I mean, women have always been there, and we know that. But it seems that women are feeling more and more emboldened to speak out for their faith and to come into community with other women as well. And when I think you have women in community and women of faith, you can move mountains. So you have a lot of good work being done through the Dorothea Project, because women feel this call to go deeper in their faith and to go deeper in service to others, motivated by their faith.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, before we let you go, let's make sure to restate when people can join you for the next meeting, but then also if they want to find out more, where online, for instance, they can look up more about the Dorothea Project nationally and also what's going on here in Des Moines.
Wonderful. So the Dorothea Project national website is dorotheaproject.com, and they have a very active educational social media presence through Instagram, which is the Dorothea Project. And then in terms of our local Des Moines chapter, I mentioned that we're going to have our next meeting for Catholic women who are motivated by Catholic social teaching. It's going to be on Saturday, April 4th, which is Holy Saturday. It's going to be in the morning at 10 o'clock at St. Catherine of Siena. And then I also want to highlight an event we have coming up this Friday that our local Dorothea Project chapter is co-hosting along with St. Teresa's. We're teaming up with their Justice and Peace ministry to co-host a special Stations of the Cross this Friday, March 27th at 5 p.m. at St. Teresa's. And the theme of this Stations of the Cross is going to be immigration, a really timely issue right now in our country. Many migrants' challenges mirror Christ's journey to the cross. And so in these Stations of the Cross, we're going to be hearing reflections on real-life experiences of migrants at our border. And I believe it will be a really powerful, prayerful experience of solidarity with our immigrant brothers and sisters. And that's open to everybody. And again, that's on Friday, this upcoming Friday, March 27th at 5 p.m. at St. Teresa's.
Absolutely wonderful. One more time, the Dorothea Project, so DOROTHEA project.com. Laura Catherine Carruthers-Green, member of Des Moines chapter of the newly started Dorothea Project. Thank you so much for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
Thank you for talking with me today.
Absolutely. We appreciate